2023, no matter how it was, turned out to be truly championship in the world of video games. Perhaps one of the best in history, but certainly the best in the last few years. The Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, and Baldur's Gate 3 stand out the most, but besides them, there were plenty of strong titles. And what about disappointments? They were there, and significant ones. In another year, some would be considered medium severity crimes, but globally, the loud failures were significantly fewer. So now, as we walk through this museum of shame, your mood won't be too spoiled. We definitely had something to play in 2023, but as for the games we will show, it's probably better to stay away.
Let's go, bitch.
The Day Before, enveloped in an aura of promises and impressive trailers, was announced in 2021, promising a blend of The Last of Us cinematic quality and the depth of modern MMO gameplay. This game quickly attracted the attention of millions, but with the hype came doubts. Could the small studio Fantastic deliver such an ambitious project? Soon it became clear something was wrong. In May 2022, the game was shifted to Unreal Engine 5, marking the beginning of a series of unpleasant revelations. Accusations of using unpaid labor, asset flipping, and copying materials from other games began to erode trust in the project. This was accompanied by numerous delays and strange legal disputes, only heightening suspicions. When The Day Before finally released, it turned out to be a complete dystopia, not in the sense it promised. With bug-ridden servers, missing features, and performance issues, the game was far from the promised MMO experience. Instead, players encountered a PvP-focused survival shooter, barely resembling what was promised. Just 4 days after the release, Fantastic announced its closure. The situation became clear. The studio was on the brink of financial collapse and apparently released the game in a bid to maximize early earnings. Accusations of deception and fraud filled the internet, leaving players with the wreckage of shattered dreams and unanswered questions. One of the most shameful failures in Microsoft's history. A year ago, Xbox head Phil Spencer positioned the vampire online shooter Redfall as one of the games for which console owners should endure the bland 2022. And when the trailer came out, which didn't have a second of real gameplay, many were tense. But even the most convinced pessimists could not expect such a horror. Listing every sin of Redfall is neither feasible nor desirable in brief. So, let's just mention some issues. Low FPS, Xbox 360, level textures, freeze, and long load times, faulty aiming on consoles, a huge number of bugs, dumb enemy AI, and some of the laziest designed levels in human history. Even one such blunder could cost a big $70 game its reputation and sales, but Redfall gathered them all. And this is not the full list. It's hard to understand what the developers were even hoping for. Making online shooters is very difficult because gamers have already invested time and money in competitors' projects. Call of Duty, Warzone, Valorant, Destiny 2, Counter-Strike. You need a game that is better at something, but Redfall failed in every possible element, collected humiliating ratings, and marked Microsoft's defeat in the new console war with Sony. This is simply not how it's done. It's the opposite. Nobody cried for a game to run around Middle-earth as Gollum, but when the game by the unknown studio Daedalic Entertainment finally came out, a terrible truth was revealed. It's not just bad, it easily takes high places in the lists of the worst games in human history. If the release of LOTR, Gollum passed you by, you can't even imagine what a mess it is. The Hobbit from 2003, assembled for 40 rubles, looks and plays better than Gollum 2023. Forget the bugs, never mind the animations that randomly break. Why does Gollum look like a title from the first PlayStation? Why is the game built around stealth and it doesn't work? Why so much platforming and it doesn't work? Why does nothing work on the most fundamental and irreparable level? Of course, we got some answers. Gollum was developed in agony, employees were underpaid, and the studio's lead people struggled with problems and had no clear plan. But this should be told to passersby at the station. Gollum just shouldn't have been released. Yes, money and time were spent. Yes, publishers expect something. But the absence of such an obviously doomed game is 1,000 times less problematic than its presence. A remarkable failure. Just bravo. An example of a very expensive but utterly pointless game with no good reason for existence. Generic fantasy about an isekai character Frey with parkour as its main feature. The game's goal: to find and defeat 4 evil villains in a dreary world. This PS5 exclusive was released by the developers of Final Fantasy XV. Slow progression, tedious battles, forgettable characters, and the world of Forspoken lacks any unique or even slightly advantageous details compared to anything else. Witcher 3, released a long time ago, seems advanced compared to Forspoken. Moreover, this misunderstanding is unforgivably poorly optimized. It would be one thing if this was a failed attempt by a relatively unknown team, like with Gollum, but no, this is a game from the creators of Final Fantasy, published by Square Enix. In 2023, such mediocre things should not be released, and certainly not ask for a full price of $70. Nobody would say that Starfield flopped in sales, and to fans of Bethesda games, it hardly seems that bad. Some are surely enjoying the title, and we're even happy for these people. But the studio's first truly new game in years wrote too many checks it couldn't cash. Starfield, a game about space? Cool, but you don't control your ship and can't land anywhere. Many planets in Starfield, yes, but they're tiny box locations with invisible walls, and the rest of the world is incredibly empty. Many quests in Starfield? Yes, but a huge part of them are radiant quests, like bring me 5 twigs and deliver this item. Starfield, an RPG? Yes, but without a role-playing system and with silly perks. There's always a yes but. The Minuses are simply galactic. Terrible facial animations, and the shameful fact that in Bethesda's flagship game, characters still stand like mannequins during dialogues. Trash loot with MMO-style stats, and your main, and at the same time, the most scripted companion in the world of Starfield. Constant loading screens. It can't be said that the Payday franchise is cult, but it had quite a few fans and a unique selling proposition in terms of concept. How many games about heists do you know? In general, Payday 3 was awaited not globally, but eagerly, and what we got was an astonishing disappointment. Unstable servers combined with mandatory online even in solo play. A very bad combination. While crashes were fixed after a week and a half, the lack of quality content in Payday 3 remained. It seems very empty, schematic, and sometimes boring. Plus, the plot is weaker than in the 2 previous parts, and the artificial intelligence is even worse. We might have witnessed the death of the heist franchise, and it's a pity that it ended so ingloriously. Unholy, the game faced serious difficulties that ultimately led to its failure. Main issues included an uncomfortable combat system and stealth mechanics, making the gameplay boring and tedious. The puzzles in the game were uninspiring and didn't add challenge, and the artificial intelligence of enemies was ineffective and often broke immersion in the game. Visual and audio effects, though having their strong points, were also criticized. The plot and world of the game turned out to be uninteresting and predictable, and the game's ending disappointed many with its simplicity and lack of player interaction. These factors collectively created an overall impression of disappointment and boredom among players and critics. Grey Hill Incident, a survival horror game set in the fictional town of Grey Hill, engulfed by an alien invasion. The plot follows Ryan Baker, a conspiracy theorist whose son is abducted by aliens. Despite its exciting premise, reminiscent of popular alien-themed movies, the game faced criticism. Key shortcomings were an illogical plot, tedious gameplay with unsatisfying stealth mechanics, poor voice acting and dialogues, and numerous technical flaws, significantly deteriorating the gaming experience. However, the game's visual design and atmosphere were acknowledged as successful, despite the overly dark lighting being criticized for impeding visibility. Overall, the Grey Hill Incident failed to meet expectations, despite its potential and intriguing central idea.